This is why you should never hike in the woods alone. A woman was alone in the woods when she encountered something that was very big and very scary. This thing stalked her while she was hiking in the snow-covered woods. Her grandparents were aware of this scary creature that lived in the woods near their home, but never really would go into details to what it could be. They would always tell her that if she ever felt unsafe in those woods, to leave immediately. Out of the many times she walked and hiked in this place, she would revert back to what her grandparents warned her, and she would end up running for her life. Hi, I'm Zach, and welcome to Rooted Expeditions. If you're a fan of the abandoned, historical, and strange events, then you are in the right place. Hit that thumbs up, and let's dive into what happened. On a cold and snowy day in early 2020, this petite 18-year-old woman, which for this story we will call her Kelly. Kelly decided to go on a walk in the woods, which this was normal for Kelly, as she would do this quite often, whether if it was hot outside or snowing like it is in this story. And on top of that, the path that she would walk down or the woods that she would travel in was really close to her grandparents' house and even where she lived. Now, the woods that she would walk and hike would get really creepy at times and almost play mind tricks on you. But that never really stopped her for exploring and hiking the woods. Kelly's grandparents always told her that while she was out in the woods walking and if she ever felt unsafe for some unknown reason, to stop what she was doing and just leave. They would never really explain why they said it the way that they did, and she just figured that they were just afraid that a wild animal might get her or attack her. But even without knowing why they said that, she would just listen to what they had to say and would do that very thing. And for what was about to happen, she would be glad she did. So as she was walking in the woods, it was a bit past 4 p.m., which she was just out there 2 days prior, and she had no problems, and she figured this would just be another day through the woods. Not long into her walk, she started to get this feeling that she was being watched. She would look around but didn't see anything, but also didn't feel like she was in any danger, so she just kept on walking and going about her business. So she kept walking for about another quarter of a mile through the snow-covered bushes and logs until she got to this old logging road, which this road was a quick way around the woods, and it would also connect to the side street that led to Kelly's house and her grandparents' house. She was already tired from the hike and was going to make her way back, and as she was making her way back home, she still could feel like something was just watching her. And as she was walking, she could see something moving out of the corner of her eye, and so she turned real quick to look, but when she looked, there was nothing there. And she could have swore she saw something over there, but when she looked, there was just nothing there. So she just kept on walking down the logging road. So she continued to walk down the logging road, heading back to her home. She started to hear what sounded like chains rattling nearby. So she stopped, and when she stopped, the noise stopped. She looked around to see maybe where could that sound be coming from, but again, she couldn't see where that sound was coming from. So she just chalked it up to maybe there was chains hanging up from a tree, and just when the wind was blowing, it was moving the chains, causing them to make that rattling sound. So a little further down the road, as she was walking, she was already starting to get close to where her grandparents' house was. And just past that is where she lived. As she was walking, she started to hear that chain rattling sound again, and this time it sounded closer. She stopped walking again and thought maybe it's something that she was wearing causing that sound. So she took a second, looked at what she was wearing, and to see maybe if something was making that sound or that chain-like sound on herself, because maybe she was thinking it was coming from her and not coming from in the woods. But when she checked herself, There was nothing on her that could have made that sound. So at this point, knowing her grandparents' house is closer than her house, she would decide to go there instead. So she would cut across back into the woods to make a straight shot to her grandparents' house, since she was really close. As she made the cut into the woods, she could hear what sounded like footsteps walking behind her as she was walking, and they sounded like they were about 10 feet from her. But what was strange is that the footsteps were in sync to Kelly's. And on top of that, it didn't really make sense to how something could be that close to her when there was no one in sight just a few seconds ago. At this point, Kelly was trying to not panic and try to act like she didn't notice what was going on behind her, and she kept walking to that straight path to her grandparents' house. She didn't even want to look back to see what could be behind her or following her 10 feet away, which was probably a good thing she didn't. So she acted like she was going to take another step forward, but stopped, hovering her foot right over the snow so that she didn't make that full step. And as she did, she heard a crunch in the snow behind her. Then immediately she could hear whatever was behind her quickly move closer to her as she was standing still. Kelly figured out, oh crap, this thing just figured out, I know it's behind me. She would start running as fast as she could towards her grandparents' house, and whatever was behind her started to chase her. It almost sounded like a human, and the sounds of chains started up again as it was chasing her. So now she knows that that chain rattling sound was coming from whatever is chasing her. This thing that was chasing her was only on 2 legs and sounded really big. As she was running, she was zigging and zagging around all these small trees and thorn bushes, and this thing behind her was going right through them as it was not even phasing whatever that creature or human thing was. It just kept on charging, knocking down all the small trees and bushes, chasing her. Then for the first time as she was running, she looked behind her to see what was chasing her, and she could see this really tall and gray humanoid thing. So now, really freaked out, as she was making the final stretch to her grandparents' house, she could hear the heavy breathing of whatever was chasing her, along with the rattling of these chains. And what was strange is that this whole time it stayed a few feet behind her the entire time that they were running. So it never gained on her, but it seemed like it just stayed a few feet from behind her. And at this point, as she got closer to the house, it started to growl at her. Kelly could hear their grandparents' dog barking like crazy, which their dog was a very big Malamute Mastiff mix. And as she got up to the house, the dog didn't even run to Kelly. It just stayed near the house, barking towards her direction at whatever was chasing her. As soon as Kelly got up to the house, she ran right inside along with the dog, slammed the door behind her, and the dog were shaking in terror from whatever was outside in those woods. After Kelly realized she was safe inside, she started crying. Her grandfather heard her, came downstairs to see what was going on, and immediately the grandfather had an idea, or a good idea, of what just happened, and told her, hey, don't think about it, just forget it ever happened. Kelly, having some idea that he knew what that was, or what that thing was, she tried to ask him why, but he refused to tell her anything. She even tried to ask her grandmother too, but she didn't say anything either, and just quickly changed the subject. So what do you think was chasing Kelly? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have a story you would like me to share on this channel, you can email me at rootedexpeditions@gmail.com. Here's a little bit of history for you. Please hit that thumbs up. Peace, I love you, and as always, God bless.